Welcome back to the Rules Plus podcast. Today's episode is the third of 12 preseason episodes focused on the 12 chapters of the Rogers Rating Study Guide to NCAA Football Rules, now authored by George Demetrio. In the May 16th episode, we reviewed Chapter 1 with its introduction to the purpose and format of the study guide, with advice from the late Dr. Rating on how to study rules productively. In the May 23rd episode last week, we reviewed Chapter 2 with its recap of recent rules changes. Today's topic is Chapter 3 with its overview of the kicking game. At the end of last week's episode, I acknowledged the considerable challenge presented by attempting to consider in one episode the 29 pages and more than 70 play scenarios devoted to the kicking game in Chapter 3. I hedged on my ambitious plan by promising only to extract the choicest nuggets and juiciest play scenarios in those pages. After all, this is our preseason preparation, a time to turn our thoughts back to football and at least broadly refresh ourselves on the basics. I'm also hedging right now on delivering comprehensive coverage of the kicking game in the next few minutes by pointing out that this podcast delivered extensive such coverage last season over the course of 11 of 22 episodes specifically focused on kicking. That's something like 5 hours of discussion of the kicking game. I recommend that you visit or revisit those episodes for in-depth comparison and contrast of symbiotic rules for sibling game situations with illustrative play scenarios. For your convenience, let me list those 11 episodes from last year now. I'll give you the episode number, the date, and again, all these dates were from 2023, and the topic. So episode number 4 from July 12th concerned illegal kicks versus illegal forward passes. Episode 5 on July 19th, kick downs versus pass downs. Episode 8, August 9th, free kicks versus scrimmage kicks. Episode 9, August 16th, free kicks versus scrimmage kicks, Part 2. Episode 10, August 23rd, free kicks versus scrimmage kicks, Part 3. And finally, Episode 11 on August 30th, free kicks versus scrimmage kicks, Part 4. Episode 12 on September 6th was about field goals versus tries, or that is points after touchdown. Episode 13 on September 13th was about kicks crossing the neutral zone versus passes crossing the neutral zone. Episode 14 on September 20th, kickoffs after a score versus free kicks after a safety. Episode 16 on October 4th, illegal kicks versus illegally kicking. And finally, episode number 20 on November 1st, illegal touches versus illegally touching. So, what's in Chapter 3? I should disclose from the beginning of this discussion that I'm still referring to the 2023 edition of the Rating Study Guide, so when I include references to pages, keep that in mind. I'll order my 2024 edition shortly, but the present edition serves perfectly well for discussing the kicking game, where there are no rules changes for 2024. Despite, or more likely because of, the length of Chapter 3, the Rating Study Guide is well organized to facilitate systematic study of the kicking game. The chapter opens with overviews of free kicks on pages 5 to 10 and of scrimmage kicks on pages 10 to 19. The chapter covers 7 major topics concerning free kicks. 1. Possession and advance of the ball. 2. Illegal touching. 3. Out of bounds. 4. When the ball becomes dead. 5. Blocking the kicker. 6. The wedge formation. And 7. Penalty enforcement. The chapter covers those 7 topics and 3 additional topics concerning scrimmage kicks. The additional 3, 1 is blocking kicks, 2 field goals, and 3 point after touchdown, or again in rules book language, the try. A very interesting section then follows on pages 20 to 24 with discussion of rules common to both types of kicks: batting the ball, touching the ball, opportunity to catch the ball, and executing a fair catch of the ball. The fair catch coverage includes the topics signaling, protection, dead ball, blocking, and what happens in the subsequent play. The chapter closes with discussion of the momentum rule on page 25, a player who is out of bounds, page 25, illegal kicks, page 26, and 69 additional play scenario examples from pages 27 to 33. So, let's refer now to coming to terms. That is, let me address one more business item before we begin: coming to terms with the important terms we should use. I can tell you from experience that the more comfortable we become in speaking the lingo of the official rules, the more confidently we can understand, apply, and explain the rules in speaking with our colleagues and our clients, players, coaches, and fans. So let's be clear on 2 things. 1, play classifications, and 2, the organizational chart for types of kicks. So first, let me address play classifications. The sound traditional advice for studying the rules book is to start with the definitions in Rule 2, and I submit that in my top 5 of sections to fully understand is Section 30, Play Classifications. It might surprise a casual fan or a rookie official that there are simply 4 kinds of plays in football: a forward pass, a free kick, a scrimmage kick, and a run. The definitions of each type are deceptively simple. A pass or a kick, free or scrimmage. Okay, let me start over again there. That's at 727. A pass or a kick, free or scrimmage, is defined as an interval of activity. A forward pass play is, quote, the interval between the snap and when a forward pass is complete, incomplete, or intercepted, end quote. That's the old 3 things can happen and 2 of them are bad principle. A free kick is, quote, the interval from the time the ball is legally kicked until it comes into player possession or is declared dead, end quote. A scrimmage kick play is the, quote, action during the interval between the snap and when the scrimmage kick comes into player possession or is declared dead, end quote. So, that leaves a run, or more precisely a running play, which is an interval that includes, but is not limited to, a run. In short, a running play is anything else that happens. Quote, a running play is any live ball action other than that during a free kick play, a scrimmage kick play, or a legal forward pass play. If that live ball action includes an interval when the ball is not in player possession, there has been a run segment that ended when the ball carrier lost possession by fumbling, passing backward, or passing forward illegally, end quotes. If some player subsequently gains or regains possession of the ball, a new running play begins. Why is it important to split hairs here between a running play and a run? Well, the reason is that a down may include multiple running plays, but any running play includes only one run, the end of which is the basic spot for penalty enforcement if a foul occurs during the running play. The distinction is also important because a down may include multiple types of plays. During a down, one or several running plays can, and usually do, follow a forward pass play, a free kick play, and a scrimmage kick play. On the other hand, during a down, what initially appears to be a forward pass play or a scrimmage kick play can, and often does, turn into a running play when there is a busted play or trick play. In either case, if a foul occurs, it's critical that we determine what kind of play was going on at the time of the foul. For example, with Team A in a scrimmage kick formation, B46 tackles the punter A7 just after A7 drops the ball, but before A7 can kick it. The ball is loose, and in the mayhem, there may be one or more fouls by either team. In determining enforcement options and enforcement spots, we could be susceptible to making the mistake of treating this as a scrimmage kick play. But since a kick never occurred, this is a running play. And even if we did recognize this as a running play, would we recognize where the end of the run is? Well, the ball is loose from a fumble, even though it was released voluntarily. How do we know this? We know this because Rule 2-11-1 says that, quote, to fumble the ball is to lose player possession by any act other than passing, kicking, or successful handing, end quote. So the running play included a very short interval when A7 possessed the ball, and the end of that run segment of the running play is the yard line where A7 dropped the ball with the intention of kicking it. If the foul or fouls occurred while the ball was loose from A7's fumble, regardless of whether or where the ball might be recovered, enforcement for the foul or fouls that occurred during the loose ball would be determined based on the basic spot for a run that ended behind the neutral zone. In addition, if either team subsequently possessed the ball, a new running play would begin. But typically, fouls that occur during a particular running play during a down are enforced based on the end of the related run. Now, you won't find a definition of the phrase related run, but you should understand that the adjective related is simply shorthand for what otherwise would be a very cumbersome phrase that, quote, a penalty should be enforced from the end of the run segment of the running play during which the foul occurred, end quote. I include this lesson in vocabulary and grammar because recently I've had this very conversation with a colleague about where the phrase related run is defined in the rules book. To summarize, a free kick play begins when a dead ball becomes live by being kicked, and a scrimmage kick begins retroactively at the snap if indeed the ball is legally kicked. Either kind of kick play ends when the resulting loose ball is possessed or becomes dead. So now, an organization chart for types of legal kicks. While it's possible to go to one place for definitions of the 4 play types, Section 2 of Rule 2 says it all, you need to visit several rules neighborhoods to pinpoint the subtle points of similarity and difference with and between legal free and legal scrimmage kicks. I count at least 6 places where you need to look. 1. Look at sections 1, 2, and 3 of Rule 6 if you want to contrast the 2 types of kicks feature by feature. Look at sections 4 and 5 of Rule 6 if you want to compare the 2 types of kicks for common features. 3. Look at section 1 of Rule 9 if you want to contrast limitations on unsafe player conduct, including eligibility to block, blocking below the waist, and contacting the snapper and the kicker. 4. Look at Section 2 of Rule 10 to contrast penalty enforcement procedures. 5. Look at both sections of Rule 5 to contrast provisions for when the continuity of downs is broken and for handling the game clock. And 6. Look at Sections 3 and 4 of Rule 3 to contrast handling the game clock, and dealing with unfair clock tactics. I can provide a testimonial that a coach may not necessarily know the subtleties that distinguish free kicks and scrimmage kicks. Here's a story for you. Late in a recent playoff game, while setting up for the kickoff after a touchdown by a team making a spirited comeback, the kicker advised our back judge that he was going to punt the ball. Our back judge dutifully advised him that a punt isn't legal for a kickoff. Nevertheless, the kicker followed his coach's orders, and yes, he punted the ball, and his team recovered the ball. I was astonished when the back judge informed me that Team A had punted. The coach of the kicking team was also astonished that he couldn't punt in that situation. That play remains the only instance I've seen in 46 seasons when I've seen a team punt during a kickoff. You just never know what can happen. I should add, of course, my self-serving pat on the back for our back judge to recognize the foul and for me to properly enforce and signal the penalty for an illegal kick as a dead ball foul. The team then subsequently followed with a legal onside kick after the 5-yard penalty, failing, sadly, to recover the ball. Here then is a succinct summary of the succinct organization chart for types of legal kicks. So, as Chapter 3 suggests, there are 2 types of legal kicks, free kicks and scrimmage kicks. For a scrimmage kick, there are 3 options: a place kick, although not for the kickoff, a drop kick, or a punt. We never see drop kicks, but if we did, it would be legal. For free kicks, there are actually 2 kinds of free kicks. There is the kick we call a kickoff, which starts either half and what we also see after a point after touchdown or a field goal. And then there is the kick that occurs after a safety. But of course, that is not a kickoff. That is technically referred to simply as a free kick after a safety. The only practical difference between a kickoff and a free kick after a safety is that while the kickoff must be a place kick or a drop kick, after a safety it may be a place kick or a drop kick or a punt. Clearly the coach in the story I told you was thinking that the punt that is allowed for the free kick after a safety also applied in the case of a kickoff. Well, he learned the hard way that it does not. So now, let's look at topics that are priorities, I think, for studying Chapter 3. I've picked 4 very tricky provisions that complicate the kicking game. In studying the 7 free kick and 10 scrimmage kick topics in Chapter 3 of the Writing Study Guide, I have found 4 topics whose details startled me when I first read and reread them in depth. I want to share those 4 topics with you to finish out this episode. 1. Illegal touching. 2. Blocking by the kicking team during free kicks. 3. The ball crossing the neutral zone. And 4. Fouls by the opponent when a touchdown is scored. Looking first and actually combining topics 1 and 4, illegal touching with a foul by an opponent when a touchdown is scored. The Writing Study Guide addresses illegal touching of a free kick on page 7 and of a scrimmage kick on page 13. In a moment, I'll share with you play example 3-5 after I provide some background by summarizing the study guide's discussion leading up to the example. We know that Team A is restricted from touching a free kick before it has gone 10 yards and from touching a scrimmage kick until it has been touched by the receiving team. What complicates things is that doing so is a violation, not a foul, and the sanction for doing so is that the receiving team has the option at the end of the down to take the ball at any spot of illegal touching. In fact, to be precise, the rules book uses the term privilege of taking the ball. However, that privilege is canceled, again, that's rulebook language, if either team accepts a penalty for a live ball foul or if there are offsetting fouls. Indeed, this provision makes Team B especially privileged because once a touching violation has occurred, the worst that can happen to Team B is to get the ball at the spot of the touching by Team A, and under no circumstances can Team A get possession at the end of the down, even if it recovers a muffed or fumbled ball, or even if Team B fouls during the running play after it gets possession. In the case of a foul by Team B, if Team A declines the penalty, Team B retains possession because of the illegal touching. If Team A accepts the penalty, Team B still retains possession because it possessed the ball at the time of the foul. I have a name, inspired by Star Trek, for the provision that a team that is penalized for a foul it committed while in possession retains possession. I think you can regard this principle as the prime directive of penalty enforcement, which you can find in a seemingly inconspicuous rule buried in Rule 5 concerning series of downs and line to gain. Honestly, do you find yourself seriously studying Rule 5 in your preparation? And you're refreshing yourself during the season? After all, the glamour rules that we tend to study are number 2, concerning definitions, number 6, concerning kicks, number 9, concerning personal fouls, and, especially if you're a referee, like me, number 10, concerning penalty enforcement. But I suggest you add Rule 5 to your study regimen. Section 2 in that rule is titled Down and Possession After a Penalty, and we tend to ignore it because its provisions are second nature to us. But then there's Rule 5-2-4 concerning fouls after a change of team possession. Verbatim, it reads, quote, if a penalty is accepted for a foul that occurs during a down after a change of team possession, the ball belongs to the team in possession when the foul occurred. End quote. We know that in our sleep. But there's a pesky little exception in bold and italic type that we can easily overlook. It reads, quote, exception, Rule 10-2-5-A, end quote. So what is 10-2-5-A? You'll recognize it as the provision that we must enforce 15-yard penalties for personal fouls and unsportsmanlike conduct fouls by the non-scoring team during a down that ends in a touchdown. It further provides that 5 or 10-yard penalties are declined by rule. So what does this exception have to do with illegal touching of a kick? Well, here's the play example in Chapter 3 I just alluded to. Example 3-5. Quote, on a kickoff from the A35, a Team A player touches the ball at the A43. As the play continues, B2 gains possession as he carries the ball for a few yards and fumbles at the A48. A29 recovers the ball and is tackled at the B45. During B2's run, B63 clips at the 50-yard line. End quote. You'll note, of course, that this play scenario is appropriate to college. In Texas high school football, we'd be kicking off from the 40-yard line. But then that doesn't affect the discussion that follows. The ruling and discussion follow. I'll hold off on sharing those as you think about what the ruling likely is. Meanwhile, here's some additional discussion of my own. When we think of Rule 10-2-5-A, I suggest that we're a bit lazy and anticipate that if we see such a situation that fits the circumstance addressed by the rule, the touchdown will be by Team A and the foul will be by Team B. Most of us will realize that the touchdown counts and enforcement will be carried over to the try, the ensuing kickoff, or the succeeding spot in extra periods. But what happens in unusual circumstances, ones we rarely see or anticipate? What if there has been one or more changes of possession during the down, as in the play example 3-5? What if Team A had committed a 15-yard foul during Team B's running play? Or what if Team B scores a touchdown and a 15-yard foul is committed by Team A? And don't forget, there is the additional complication of an illegal touch of the free kick. What happens then? What may happen then is that it may be easy to forget to enforce the penalty. We are vulnerable to quickly declining the penalty when the foul is by Team A during Team B's running play that results in a touchdown. We are even more vulnerable to dismissing Team A's foul when its foul is before Team B gains possession. So, here is the ruling from the Reading Study Guide. Then I'll address the situation in which Team A commits a foul rather than Team B. Ruling, and I'm quoting, Team A will accept the penalty, which will be enforced at the spot of the foul. It will be 1st and 10 for Team B at the B35. This is on page 7 of the study guide. End quote. Well, this makes sense. Why would Team A let Team B have the ball at the spot of illegal touching on the A43 instead of at the B35? But now, here is the additional discussion from the Reading Study Guide, which raises the possible complication that Team A scores a touchdown. Quote, in this scenario in which Team B fouls after getting possession, Team A may not keep the ball in any event, unless they return it for a touchdown, see below. Suppose that in example 3-5, Team A returns the fumble for a touchdown. If Team B commits a personal or unsportsmanlike conduct foul, then the exception in 5-4 applies. The touchdown stands, and Team A may accept the penalty, thereby canceling the illegal touching. If the foul is any type other than a 15-yard foul, then the penalty is declined by rule. End quote. That's on page 7. Okay, we're duly alerted that 10-5A can introduce a major complication by superseding the prime directive. Team A can accept a penalty for Team B's foul while Team B was in possession, and yet 1. Keep the result of the play when it was again in possession, while 2. Thereby canceling Team B's privilege to keep the ball at the spot of illegal touching. But that's not yet the full story. Let's consider now the scenario I said I'll address next, the situation in which Team A commits a foul rather than Team B. Here are 2 plausible scenarios. 1. Team A clips before a turnover during its running play that results in a fumble returned by Team B for a touchdown. Or 2. Team A commits a face mask foul after a turnover against the Team B runner as he returns the fumble for a touchdown. In both scenarios, under the provision of 10-5A, the penalty for Team A's foul should be carried over, enforced on the ensuing try or kickoff by Team B or at the succeeding spot in extra periods. I think we're particularly susceptible to getting it wrong in scenario number 1 when the foul occurs before the change of possession and not during the running play that produced the touchdown. How can a foul by Team A while it was in possession not result in Team A keeping the ball if its penalty is enforced? The answer, of course, is in that exception buried in Rule 524, where the exception to the prime directive is clearly stated. But there are also similar exceptions in 523 for situations when there is a foul before a change of possession. That rule reads, quote, if a penalty is accepted for a foul that occurs between the goal lines before a change of possession during a down, the ball belongs to Team A. End quote. 30-11. Okay. Duh, we know that. But do we also know the 4 exceptions that are listed? During a try down, that's in 833B1, post-scrimmage kick enforcement, 1023, fouls by Team A during a kick, 1024, and fouls by the non-scoring team during a down that ends with a touchdown, 1025. So in scenario 1, Team A's foul can and should be enforced even though the clipping foul had nothing to do with the touchdown portion of the play. In fact, in Chapter 11 of the study guide concerning penalty enforcement, the point is made explicitly about the impact of 1025A. Quote, it does not matter whether the foul by the non-scoring team takes place before or after the change of team possession. End quote. That's on page 194 of the 2023 edition. The moral of the story should be clear. Even though Team B's foul didn't occur during Team A's touchdown running play, the penalty may be enforced under the provision of 1025A. In fact, Team A must accept the penalty to negate Team B's privilege of taking the ball at the spot of the touching violation. Now turning to Topic 2, blocking by the kicking team during free kicks. The previous discussion combined the consideration of Topics 1 and 4 and was understandably lengthy. This discussion of Topic 2 is not so much so, but it is similarly important for 2 reasons, as we'll see shortly. On page 9, the Reading Study Guide says, quote, during a free kick, Team A is not allowed to block until it is eligible to touch the ball. That's from Rule 6.1.12. This action happens most often during onside kicks when kicking team members are trying to prevent their opponents from getting to the ball. If the block is otherwise legal, such as a straight-ahead block above the waist, this foul carries only a 5-yard penalty. However, if it is a block that is a personal foul, such as a blindside block, then it carries its usual penalty. That's on page 9, end quote. The signal for the 5-yard version of the illegal block is simply the rolling arms illegal procedure indication, confirming that the purpose of the blocking restriction in 6.1.12 is to address competitive balance, not to address player safety. Yet, aren't we susceptible to treating this foul as a 15-yarder in virtually every case? An illegal block by a Team A player sure looks and feels a lot like an illegal block of the kicker by a Team B player, 6.1.9, which of course is a personal foul related to player safety. So it should now be apparent that, okay, wait a minute, 3347. So it should now be apparent what the 2 reasons are that it's important to understand the difference between 6.1.12 and 6.1.9. Reason 1, the difference between a 15-yard and a 5-yard penalty is certainly significant. And reason 2, since the 6.1.12 foul by Team A typically happens in an onside kick situation, that foul is occurring during a critical play, during a critical situation in the game. Imagine making Team A re-kick from its own 25-yard line instead of from its own 35-yard line, or adding 15 yards to the spot where Team B will next put the ball in play instead of adding only 5 yards. Example 3-13 adds the extra twist of a change of possession during such a play. Here's the example. Quote, on a kickoff before a Team B player has touched the ball, A55 blocks an opponent at the A43. This block is in front and above the waist. B22 then gains possession, carries the ball for a few yards, and fumbles. A29 recovers the ball and is tackled. Ruling: a foul by Team A for blocking before being eligible to touch the ball. The 5-yard penalty is enforced from the previous spot, and Team A re-kicks. The penalty cannot be enforced from the succeeding spot because Team B was not in possession at the end of the down. End quote. Page 9. I won't even go where some Rules Plus participants would want to go. What if Team B scored? What if there were fouls? And so forth. We've had enough such complicating twists already for this episode. Finally, I want to address topic 4, the ball crossing the neutral zone. The final Reading Study Guide startling topic concerns when a scrimmage kick has crossed the neutral zone and the implications when that does or doesn't happen for eligibility to touch the ball, to possess the ball, and to advance the ball. I'll start with a brief discussion of relevant rules and then close with 4 illustrative play examples from Chapter 3. Section 3 of Rule 6 covers the implications for play action when either a scrimmage kick crosses or fails to cross the neutral zone. If the kick has crossed the neutral zone and has remained beyond it or has rebounded behind it, here's what can or can't happen. No inbounds player of Team A may touch it. Any inbounds player may touch, catch, or recover the ball once it has been touched by Team B. If a Team B player catches or recovers it, the ball remains in play. If a Team A player catches or recovers it, the ball becomes dead. The continuity of downs is broken, so there is no more line to gain or neutral zone. And if Team A retains possession, the clock starts on the snap. Now, if the kick fails to cross the neutral zone, as long as it is behind the neutral zone, what can or can't happen? Well, all players may touch, catch, or recover the ball, which remains in play. Team A players may advance the ball, make a legal forward pass, or execute another legal scrimmage kick. The continuity of downs is not broken, and all the rules pertaining to scrimmage kicks apply to a field goal attempt. You have to go to Rule 7, Section 3, to confirm that Team A may make one forward pass during each scrimmage down from behind the neutral zone prior to a change in team possession. You have to go to Rule 2, Section 16, to confirm that a scrimmage kick has crossed the neutral zone when it touches the ground, a player, an official, or anything beyond the neutral zone. The Reading Study Guide clarifies 2 details. 1. Quote, if an airborne, untouched kick crosses the neutral zone and is blown back by the wind and first touches something or someone behind the zone, it is considered to not have crossed the zone. End quote. That's on page 11 with a reference to AR 631, play Roman 2. And the second detail, quote, the blocking of a scrimmage kick by an opponent of the kicking team who is no more than 3 yards beyond the neutral zone is considered to have occurred within or behind the neutral zone. The reference there is 631b. So, here are 4 final illustrative examples from the chapter. I'll now wrap up this speed reading of Chapter 3 with these 4 examples from the Additional Examples section on page 33 at the end of Chapter 3. Example 64. Quote, 4th and 10 on the A20. A27 punts and B44 catches the kick at the B40 and returns it to the 50, where he fumbles. A21 recovers the fumble at the A45 after going out of bounds on his own at the A35, and he recovers the fumble during the return. He returns in bounds just before the fumble. Ruling: there is no foul for returning in bounds. A21 did not leave the field during the kick play. End quote. Here's an illustrative example of why our earlier discussion of the types of plays possible during a down is important to understand. It's critical to know during which play segment during a down a foul occurred. Next example, 65, quote, on a fourth down field goal attempt, holder A22 muffs the snap. A1 kicks the loose ball between the uprights. Ruling: the kick does not score, and it is a foul for illegally kicking the ball. The status of the ball does not change. The result of the play is a touchback. If the penalty is accepted, it will be enforced 10 yards from the spot of the foul and a loss of down. It will be Team B's ball, 1st and 10. End quote. This example is illustrative of the difference between an illegal kick and illegally kicking the ball, and note that illegally kicking a loose ball does not change its status. The question is, what is the status of the ball, which is a particularly important detail for a fourth down play. Is the ball loose from a fumble? Is it loose from the kicking activity? Well, it is neither. The snap is a backward pass. So if a Team A player recovered the loose ball after it was kicked, the fourth down fumble rule would not apply. The ball would remain in play, and whether the ball is recovered ahead of or behind the neutral zone is irrelevant. Next example, example 68. Quote, 4th and 10 on the A45. A17 punts from the A37. B41 muffs the ball back behind the neutral zone to the A40, where A21 recovers and punts again. B31 fair catches at the B30. Ruling: a second punt is legal when made from behind the neutral zone before team possession is changed. However, the ball is immediately dead when A21 recovers it because the ball crossed the neutral zone. Since B41 touched the kick beyond the neutral zone, A21's recovery is legal and the continuity of downs is broken. The ball belongs to Team A, 1st and 10 at the A40. The clock starts on the snap. End quote. This example is illustrative of the importance of the verb tense in the phrase, the kick has crossed the neutral zone. If the phrase were, the kick is beyond the neutral zone, that could mean that a kick that subsequently bounds back behind the neutral zone is in play for every player of Team A. The use of present perfect tense has crossed signals that history matters. Once a kick has crossed the neutral zone, its status is permanent. The other important point of this example is that after a legal kick play, regardless of what happened or which team ends up with the ball, the clock starts on the snap, not on the ready for play for the next down. That's obviously very important in a situation in which the continuity of downs has not been broken and Team A retains possession of the ball in a late game situation. And finally, let's look at example 69. Quote, on 4th down, the kick by punter A18 is partially blocked and crosses the neutral zone, where A67 kicks the ball out of bounds, or B, the ball is muffed behind the original line of scrimmage, where A18 kicks the ball out of bounds. Ruling: a foul for illegally kicking the ball. The basic spot is the previous spot. In A, if the penalty is accepted by Team B, it will be enforced 10 yards from the previous spot without a loss of down, or at the succeeding spot. In B, the foul occurs behind the basic spot, so enforcement is from the spot of the foul with a loss of down or at the succeeding spot. In either case, if the penalty is declined, it will be Team B's ball 1st and 10 at the out-of-bounds spot. This example is illustrative of 3 important ideas. 1. The difference between the loss of down provision and the penalty for illegally kicking, depending on where the ball was when kicked. 2. The application of the 3-and-1 principle for plays when there is no neutral zone. And 3. The status of a loose ball does not change when a player muffs the ball. So, a closing word. I hope you found your time well spent with this sampling of stuff to study regarding the kicking game. Obviously, there's so much more to explore. Remember, you can find considerable additional discussion in the 11 episodes of this podcast from 2023 that I touted at the beginning of today's episode. I hope you'll make time to listen to next week's episode for discussion of Chapter 4 of the Reading Study Guide, covering scrimmage requirements and live ball versus dead ball topics. These situations should be our bread and butter because they're by far the most common situations we face. Remember, I'm a member of the Austin Football Officials Association, and we're open for new applicants right now. Our extensive training in the classroom, through Zoom, and with on-field experience begins June 10th. If you'd like to learn more about us, contact us. You can email us at recruiting@afoa.ws, visit our website at www.austinfootballofficials.org, call us at 512-298-2987, or, on your favorite social media platforms, use one of these hashtags: TXHSFB, Now Hiring, Greatness, Workout, Awesome, and Tradition. Until next time, have a great week.